What's the challenge with their offense? It's a new quarterback, new running back. It's a lot of things maybe you don't see. A lot of guys you haven't seen over the course of the season.
Yeah, I mean, depending on who plays quarterback, if it's Rattler or somebody else, there's film on him. There's film on all three. You kind of watch the last few games and what they've done, and you watch early in the season. You try to compare and see what's different, right? I think they've got multiple running backs who are more than capable of playing well, and their O-line is healthy and playing well. I know they're banged up at the wide receiver position. I think they have really good tight ends, but you study what you can, and you go out and you play.
Luke Musgrave apparently was running scout team. So you've got to see Luke. I'm not sure, you're probably not studying him. What have you thought of 88 going up against your defense?
No, it's good to see him back. Just good to have him back out there. We got to see quite a bit of him in training camp, and we know what he's capable of doing and what he brings to the offense. So to see him kind of getting ready to go, it's exciting. And anytime you get a player like that giving us a look, it's very helpful.
Jeff, what have you thought of how your defensive front guys have dropped back, when you've asked them to drop back into coverage? What's your expectation there? They're obviously not defensive backs, to cover an area. But what have you thought about that and how that's worked for you?
When we dropped some of the guys into zones? I think they've done a great job. I mean, we've had a very, very high success rate on those calls, and I think they're a huge part of it. Right, and we're not asking them to play man. We're not asking them to, run with players down the field. We're just asking them to get to a spot, read the quarterback, and play ball. And they're athletic enough to do it. They've embraced it. You don't want to do it all the time, but when you give a D lineman a couple of chances to do that, they genuinely like to do it because they want to maybe have an interception or get their hands on a football. So they've embraced it, and they've done a really good job. It's been part of the reason why it has been successful. But we're not asking them to do very much and run with a player down the field or cover a wide out or a tight end. It's more just getting to a spot and reading off the quarterback and playing ball.
You might have talked about this back in March or whenever you were discussing your hires, but what made you want to hire Campanelli on your staff? Because according to my very brief research, you guys haven't worked together before this?
No, we've never worked together, but I feel like I've probably known him for over 15 years. From the same area, and I think I mentioned this before with him. When I was a younger coach, even coaching Division III and 1AA, he was at a high school and I used to go to it all the time, and we just kind of hit it off and we'd hang out. I'd go to the school, we'd hang out, we'd meet up after and just talk football, draw plays. And then I got to Pitt. He came and visited me when I was at Pitt, and we continued to have a really good friendship and relationship. And a lot of that started with the respect I had for him and how hard he worked. And, I tried to get him into college football, and that worked out. And we've just become really close. I have a huge amount of respect for him as a coach, his knowledge, how hard he coaches, his intensity, but more importantly as a person. He's an extremely loyal friend. He always has been. He's a guy that no matter where I've been, if I picked up the phone and needed anything, I know he'd be right there. And when Matt first called me, he was one of my first phone calls. And once we decided to go in this direction, and he had a bunch of opportunities to go elsewhere, and we've been kind of waiting to do this for a while. It's actually funny that you brought that up, because we were texting. We were on two separate planes on the way home from the last game, and we were texting back and forth. And he just wrote me a text back like, "How cool is this? This is what we always talked about doing." So it's actually really neat to finally get a chance to coach with him, because I hadn't before, but I feel like I have. We just hadn't. So, but what a great job he's done with the linebackers, him and Sean Duggan, with those young guys. And obviously it's shown. I thought Quay, before he got injured, was playing really, really good football. I mean, really good. And then obviously the other guys for sure.
I was talking to McDuffie today about how Campanelli will show boxing clips and Muhammad Ali clips. He said that happened at Boston College too. What do you see as the purpose of that, and is that to the full team once a week? What is kind of the whole story behind that?
He's a big boxing guy. You can ask the linebackers to get more into detail about it, but when he does do his ball presentation in front, it usually finishes with a fight. But he's a big boxing guy, yeah. Everything has to do with boxing with him. He's a historian when it comes to boxing as well.
in the previous instances when Eric Wilson has had to fill in at the Mike linebacker role? How did you, what stood out about him taking on that role and then how he performed in it?
Yeah, I think he performed really well. He did it at Indy, he did it at Houston, he did it at Jacksonville. And, you know, at that position, there's a lot that goes into it. One, he's got to get the call from me. He's got to give that to everybody. He's got to make checks up front. He's got to make checks behind him. You know, he's got to calm everything down. He's got to get certain guys lined up. Eric's a really smart player. You know, we cross-train all those guys. So Eric's played Sam, Mike, and Will. And when you got to get that green dot halfway through a game, that's not easy. And when you have to tell everybody else what they're doing and then go out and execute your job, I mean, I know that might not seem hard, but that's not easy. Some of our calls can be kind of lengthy. So for him to make a tackle, get up, shake off whatever just happened, gather everybody up, tell everybody the call, hear my check, here's something else I might tell him what I think is coming, right, to tell this guy or that guy, and then line up and make a close call and get us in. I mean, there's a lot that goes into that. And I think he's a veteran guy who brings a calmness. And I think he's had success doing that. So we'll see where Quay's at, and then we'll figure out who will be in that position.
What was the most impressive thing about Cooper? Obviously, he didn't play for the last 3 games and comes out and has a whole bunch of game-changing plays for you.
I mean, there was a lot that was impressive about him. One, he hadn't practiced very much. And then, I mean, he just makes a lot of splash plays. I mean, you see how fast he is. He's a great tackler. He's a great blitzer. He should have had 2 interceptions in the game. I mean, he should have had the one when they were backed up, and he'll tell you that, so I'm not knocking him at all. His ability to close, I mean, there was a screen that was thrown that he was like 8 yards away from it, and by the time the guy caught the ball, he was right there. He can eat up the grass really fast. And sometimes he might not be in the right position, but he has that ability to make up for it. So the more he learns and the better he gets, he's going to get better and better and better. And he's really matured and developed. Again, I think Camp and Sean Duggan have done a really good job with him. We just need him to stay healthy so he can practice and then play more and more. I mean, we would have played him more last week, but he was coming off a soft tissue injury, so we didn't want to re-injure him. But he obviously played really well. He's been the NFC Player of the Week twice now. So.
You talk about the receiver screen. You talk about him closing gaps, facing the screen.
Yeah, it was that and the running back screen. I mean, he did it again today in practice. I mean, the guy's just got the ability to eat up grass and run, you know. But the more he practices and can stay healthy, he's just a guy you want on the field.
Jeff, I don't know how many guys get a chance at an interception right after they nearly had one.
Talking about CV?
Yeah. So
yeah, that's rare.
Right, but to come back and make the play the next time, you know, I'm sure he would want to make the first one, but what's that say about him, you think?
I mean, just the resiliency. And the cool thing about CV was, and I think Matt might have mentioned this because we made him the G of the week, the way he practiced last week, I mean, I knew he was going to play well. And that's not like me just blowing smoke. Like, if you watched him practice last week, the way he pressed, the way he covered, he had multiple interceptions, he had multiple PBUs. And then when you go see him do it in the game, and it's what I said to him right after the game. Obviously I congratulated him, but that's how he practiced. And when you do that, that's usually happens on game day, right? The first one, we were in a cover 2, and X did a great job disguising it, and Gino threw a ball that he probably wishes he had back because he shouldn't have thrown it. And CV kind of went up, and he should have had that one. The other one, he was in man on another guy and fell off his man and made the play, which was an incredible, incredible play. So he made a harder one than he would have the first time. But just the resiliency and how he's played all year. He's another guy that he's been in and out of practice. He's had injuries. He wasn't here for a lot of the training camp. And now he's kind of getting in the groove, and he's playing really well. And I would expect that from him going forward.
Did you say G of the week?
Yeah, he was the G of the week. You got to ask Matt about that because I don't want to give away any of his secrets. But he was. So next time you talk to Matt, make sure you ask him what the G of the week is. Or you can ask Steno. Maybe Steno's been here longer than me, so you should open up your press conference and say, hey, Steno, what's the G of the week? He'll probably tell you. I just don't know if I'm supposed to because I'm still like the new guy. So ask Steno to do that. He'll do it.
Don't prep him on his way in.
I won't tell him anything. Usually I make stuff up when I see him anyway. Is that an SMU shirt? Are you an SMU fan?
He wears a different color sweatshirt.
He wears it for conversation pieces.
I see it started a conversation right now. We played him last year in the bowl game. Yeah. Yep. We got him in the bowl game last year, my last game there. Yeah, so I like SMU too. We won by, I think, 14 points. It was a good game. Kind of like Syracuse. All right, back to real questions.
Do you ever see Cooper's position being middle linebacker? I mean, could you see that down the road? That being
Sure.
his best position?
Why best? What makes the Mike different than the Will? He has an opportunity to make a ton of plays at the Will. If we felt like Mike was better suited, sure, he could do it. In time, yeah, I absolutely think that he could. I think he's a really good Will linebacker. I think he could be a great Sam linebacker too. So I think he could be a great Sam, Mike, or Will. The thing you got to be really careful of right now as a young guy who's missed a lot of practice is trying to get him to learn too much because he just hasn't had the reps at one, let alone two. Like he's played some Sam for us, and now he's really playing a lot of Will. So you just got to be careful overloading him, or he won't be able to go out there. And it's not like it's not as easy as you think, right? It's not like I'm going to go out and play corner, and then I'm going to go play. There's more that goes into switching from that position.
Two more, please.
I don't want to make this into a long answer, but
I can try to make it short.
could you thumbnail through what you're looking for from each of those three spots?
Oh, no, that would take me. We can sit down when the season's over, and we can do a whole story on it. I wouldn't even know where to be. I'd give you, knowing myself, we'd be here for like another half hour.
Is that a promise that you'll sit down with all of us and help us understand your defense better? Because we've been promised that before, and it never
I have
happened.
no problem if they now, I don't know that you got to ask. If they tell me that, I got no problem. If I'd be happy after the season to sit down and fill you in on the evolution of our defense this year, which has certainly evolved.
And that's what actually, not the off-season version of it, the current version.
Sure.
I feel like, we talked about this a couple weeks ago, and I'm definitely not the smartest guy in the room, and I assumed that switching to a 4-3 where you were more aggressive and was more simple than some of the things that they tried to do last year, the transition wouldn't be that difficult. But when you transition, I'm learning it doesn't matter, it's still difficult. Mm-hmm. So where do you think you are in that transition? I know you're never satisfied, you always talk about how you could be better, but where do you think you are and where do you think you can still get in the last 3 games and into the postseason?
Yeah, I mean, I think we're in a good spot. I do. I think where we're at right now is our guys understand what they're doing, and they're playing really fast, and they're playing really hard, and they're starting to make a lot of plays. And you can see it. Whether I sit up in the booth or whether I put on the tape, they're playing fast, and they're physical, and they're playing hard. So what that tells me, they know what they're doing. So therefore, I think we're in a good spot. And I give the coaches credit, and I give the players credit for getting to that point, because you could feel it. Like if you turn on week 1 to now, it's a totally different speed and confidence, right? I think we need to be more consistent. And I think we have been in certain games. I think last week was a great example of that. But we need to be consistent as we finish the season, and we need to continue to take the steps to do that. There can't be lapses, and there can't be mistakes if we're going to try to do what we think we can do. But I think the guys are starting to feel like they can, and that is the most important thing to me. There's a confidence in that room right now, and that is so important, where when they're playing, they're not thinking as much, and they're just doing it, and they're communicating, and they're starting to have fun doing it. And you can see that in practice too.
So can I follow up real quick?
You go ahead.
So were there some mileposts on that? Like, we gave each other kind of some about the Bears game, right? Mm-hmm. But you guys, Detroit's got a really good offense, but there were still some really good moments in that game. So have there been some mileposts on the journey to this point that you saw, okay, now this is starting to click?
That's a great question. And truthfully, I mean, I just don't have any time to sit back and really reflect on it. And then when you ask, I start to while I'm up here. And you bring up the Bears game, and I mean, we didn't finish in that game, but we were in the spots. We were closer, and we were in the spots we were supposed to be. Then we played a really good game. And if you look at the Lions game, we did a lot of good things in the Lions game. The result didn't show, but the process was still right. And we were still getting better in that game. I told you we did some really good things in the run game. We did some really good things in the pass game. We couldn't get off the field in certain situations, right? And then you piece it together last week where we did finish when we were in those positions, and we did make the plays when we were in those situations, and we did get off the field on the third downs, right? And we did that. And now it's about consistency because we showed that we can do it against a good team, against several good teams, right? I mean, this whole season, and there's a starting point to where we started and what we thought we could be. And what I've learned over the course of the year, and I've said this to you, my job wasn't to come in here and put down a playbook and say, this is what we're running. Initially, I had to do that because I'm just going to make stuff up, right? But then our job as coaches was to figure out who do we have, what can they do, and we've evolved through the year to give these guys we currently have the best opportunity to succeed. And along the way, we've had to change some stuff, which you guys have seen as you've watched the tape, right? We've had to get creative in some areas, and we've had to change stuff up in some areas. It's the same thing when players get injured. So you have to be able to adapt and adjust. And I think when we're done with this whole season, hopefully we'll continue to play our best game the last week with that consistency. And then I think the beautiful thing is you're going to look at it, take a deep breath, really reflect, and then you're going to piece it all together, and it's just going to be that much better because we know who we are. So I give the players a ton of credit for the way they've adjusted, and in week whatever we are right now, how they're playing. And again, it's not perfect. And there's some mistakes that we have got to fix if we're going to win and win and win. But I cannot be more grateful to how the players have bought in.